Good morning. I-10 George Realty, Coldwell Banker Commercial George Realty. Thank you for attending the training today. This is session 2 of the changes to the forms, and this will be a shorter session. There's not as many to address today as last week. So if you have any questions about any real estate matters, Peter Cam is here as well. So you can ask any questions today. This session will not be as long as the first one. So I'm going to start my share. Okay, so today we're addressing all of the changes that we'll be addressing today have to do with residential leasing. So we'll start with the residential lease agreement. So here in 4A on page 1, they're reminding everybody that the maximum amount of the security deposit can only be 1 month unless there's an exception on CAR form SDDA. So we'll look at that after we go over this next change. Payment of last month's rent. That's not the change, but it says here when they should be giving back the deposit. So within 20 days after the tenant vacates the premises, the housing provider needs to furnish the tenant with an itemized statement indicating the amount of the security deposit received and the basis for deducting any. They have to provide statement, documentation, copies of receipts, and they need to return the remaining deposit to the tenant. Okay. So these are good things for because I know you're all great at service to just remind the housing provider of the time frame. If they're small operators, sometimes, they're not aware of all this. So it'll be helpful if you can help them and let them know to keep receipts and documentation of any repairs. Security deposit disclosure addendum. This is the form that was referenced and telling you who's exempt from the 1 month. So you can read that here. If the landlord is a natural person or a limited liability in which all members are natural persons and the landlord owns no more than 2 residential rental properties that collectively include no more than 4 dwelling units offered for rent. So take a look at that if the housing provider feels that they are exempted from that 1 month. Now remember, there's special treatment for service members here. Service members, we cannot charge more than 1 month regardless of this exemption above. Okay, so exception above. I just wanted to point this form out to you. This is not new, but it's something to be mindful of. Okay. So now we are on, let me see, E, the deposit. Okay, any security deposit returned by check needs to be made out to all adult tenants named on the agreement. So it's all the adults named on the agreement. The check would need to go back to, it will be cut to all tenants unless this has been modified by all tenants, this requirement, okay? So they're just reminding you it'll be made out to everybody. So stove and refrigerator, we all know that as of the first of the year, that the housing provider needs to provide that stove and refrigerator maintained in good working order and not subject to any recalls, okay? So that's under 11A. And in the premises, unless it's, you can just, if you follow along on the pages, let me go down and I'll tell you what page this is. This is page 3 of 9, residential lease. Okay, so unless this, the premises is a permanent supportive housing, a single room occupancy unit, a residential hotel or dwelling unit within a housing facility that offers shared communal kitchen space, then if it's not one of those, you do need to provide that stove and refrigerator maintained in good working order, okay?
Did you say, was it page 339?
Page 3 out of 9 on the residential lease or month to month. Okay, tenant election 11C to bring their own refrigerator. If the tenant wants to bring their own refrigerator, you check this box when you are cutting the lease, helping the housing provider get the lease prepared. But however, remember that the tenant may, within 30 days of written notice, inform the housing provider that they no longer wish to keep their own refrigerator and that the housing provider shall install a refrigerator for them. So, okay, so just remember that. So this form populates with this notice of change in terms to tenancy instructions. It's not to be provided to the tenant. It's just a, okay, so now we're on the notice of change in terms of tenancy. This sheet here is for the housing provider to read, gives them some information. Okay, it's not to provided to the tenant. Remove this instruction page before serving the attached 2-page form, which is the notice of change in terms of tenancy. Okay, so the changes here, again, they're outlining that other changes not included in the rent, that the housing provider is to provide a stove and working refrigerator. And this box here gets checked if it was not previously checked in the lease. You don't have to recheck it if that was already covered in the original lease. But here, if they've if there's been a decision that they provide their own, you need to check it. But don't recheck it if you already did that in the original lease or the tenant did. Okay. So all of this is just pretty simple changes, just mainly covering the refrigerator stuff and stove. So again, the extension of lease, there is a cover sheet not to be provided to the tenant. It is instructions for the housing provider. Okay, so extension of lease, again, they've added in the additional terms of the stove and refrigerator right here in 5A. That is the only change. Okay. Rental property owner intake form. I just put that at the top. There's no changes on this page. So we're going to go down to paragraph 22 in this form. Paragraph 22. They've amended this to read about the laundry room and appliances. This oven is new. Wine refrigerator is new. Microwave is new. And they've also put an other box. So whether these appliances are provided with the lease, yes or no. And then you check, the housing provider checks the appropriate boxes. And like I said, this top row is all newly added. If there's anything else, they can check that here and write it in, okay? And they've also added 22C, whether there is an existing stove and refrigerator in good working order. And then it reiterates the California law here and the fact that a tenant may elect to bring their own refrigerator and be responsible for the maintenance. So they've been really, everywhere you can look, they're reminding and updating the forms to reflect that new law. Okay.
Somehow we're missing pages.
Okay.
Which one is this one?
This is page 3 of 3 of the rental property owner intake form. And remember, this is not to be provided to the tenant. This is for the listing agent, or we're not property managers, but if it was a property manager. This is information for the listing agent and the property management company. Notice of right to inspection. They have an added here, the electronic security deposit return here. So the housing provider shall return any remaining deposit electronically if the tenant is a sole tenant and the tenant initially paid their security deposit or rent electronically, okay? Or they can elect down here. So the tenant requests an itemized statement to the email above. Tenant requests that the remaining balance of the security deposit be sent to, and then they fill out their bank information so they can amend that. So maybe they paid initially by a cashier's check and now they want it electronically returned. On this form, they can amend that to get that done, okay? And then fill that out and have the tenant sign it and provide a copy to the housing provider. That is the only change on this form. Pre-move out inspection statement. Okay, so I just added the top one so you know what form it is. So we're scrolling through to the bottom of this form, pre-move out inspection statement, all the way to the bottom. They've again mentioned the security deposit, that if they provided it electronically, they're going to be required to return that electronically to the same bank. Only, but only if they designate it in that other form. They can designate with an addendum or in the other form that they want to change to electronic refund of the security deposit. Okay, so tenant requests that the check all that apply, that the housing provider return any remaining deposit electronically. So you see down here, they give them another chance here. Tenant's going to ask that they return it electronically. And the tenant is going to request again on this that the housing provider send a copy of the itemized statement of use of this, whatever usage of the tenant's security deposit. They need to have copies of documents showing those charges incurred and deducted to repair or clean the premises. Okay. So here is important. When they amend this, the housing provider has to say, yes, I see what you checked here. And then they need to initial that they're going to do as requested above, okay? So if this box comes into play and the tenant's checked anything, please have the housing provider initial that they're aware of that. Okay, we don't want to miss those initial boxes. Rental property, if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my own notes. Owner advisory. So again, they've added about the working refrigerator and those things. This advisory is really good for the owner to read through. It does provide some information on rent control, some of the laws, disclosures, security deposit laws. So this is a really good form. We should be also familiar with it, but also, you know, explain to the housing provider that this has a lot of good information in it for them. So make sure that you're pointing that out and having them read it. And then here, return to tenant. It's again restating if the housing provider receive the security deposit electronically, it shall be returned unless amended. Okay. So, and it's also if there's more than one adult tenant, then a check will be returned to all adult tenants, made payable to all of them, okay? Unless they amend that, they can go ahead and amend that. Offer of tenant positive rental reporting. Let's see, there wasn't much change here. So there's an exemption that they've made a little tighter so it's easier to understand. Tenants' right to request that housing provider report tenants' positive rental payments to nationwide consumers. So they've amended these to make it easier flow. So 1B, housing provider shall comply with the request for positive rental payment information reporting in either of the following two scenarios. So we need to be familiar with these. If the premises is located in a residential building that contains 16 or more units and housing provider is the landlord of that building, okay, there's your operative word. If the premises is located in a residential building that contains 15 or fewer units and the housing provider is the landlord of the building and both of the following apply. Housing provider owns more than one residential rental property, regardless of the number of units. So if they own one more, or the housing provider is a real estate investment trust corporation, limited liability, unless one in which at least one member is a corporation. Okay, so read these over, go over it with your clients. If you guys have questions, I'll go over that further individually with you. And so that, let's see, I think that's lease listing agreement. I think there's one change on here. Let's see, it's towards the let's see, towards the back. Oh, they've added the referral fee. So if, when you're listing this, if you owe another broker a referral fee, you're going to check that box and the RAD form will populate. Okay, on J. That's the only change there. And then there's one at the back. Brokers and RPO duties. So this again is going over the digitally altered forms. I mean, pictures, excuse me. So as we went over training last week on that, or the week before, I can't remember, and Peter's done it in the Monday meetings. If you are altering those photos, I have been looking at the MLS, and as I mentioned in the last time we talked about this, you put the picture of the digitally altered with the normal picture behind it that is not altered. So you're going to have to show both sets, okay? If you're altering anything, I recommend you put the unaltered photo behind it, or, you know, just to be safe, because that's what a lot of your large brokerages are doing. They're putting altered and unaltered right behind it. Okay, so they're just reminding us here about digitally altered or AI photos, okay? So that's all the changes. Now we've gone over everything. Most of this, like today, was all leasing. So are there any questions? Because this is a short one on any real estate matters. Okay. Anybody have questions? Okay, so if you're going to be doing a residential lease agreement, you can, and haven't done it in a while, stop by, I'll help you. We'll look at it together if you feel like you haven't done one in a while, and any of your forms will help you with. So if there's no questions, this was very short today. Okay.
Michelle, what's the commission? There's no limit on the lease?
Every commission is negotiable.
Okay, that's, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it becomes market, you know, whatever the market bears, right?
But also the same thing applies like on the regular sale, you can't publish the commission to a buyer.
No.
Okay.
But, you know, a lot of the agents will call and ask, you know, will the housing provider or the property owner participate, you know, with the compensation? I would be careful quoting an amount. I would say, yes, they're open to it, submit. The reason why is because maybe the terms and conditions on any of the offers or whatever, it makes them pause and say, hey, you know, because of these terms, I'm going to offer less commission or whatever. I wouldn't really want to stick a number. I would want to be very careful about that. I would say, you know, yes, it's, you know, they will cooperate, submit, you know, as far, you know, so, but don't stick a percentage, because what if the terms and conditions make them pause and want to do something different? Okay. So it's better to let the housing provider or the property owner speak for themselves in a counter offer on any of that commission based. Okay. Any other questions? And also, when you are doing leasing, please make sure there's no changes on it, but that you fill out the TRBC, and that's your tenant representation agreement. Make sure you fill that out. There's no changes on it. So when you are running with a tenant, that is a single page document. It's very simple to fill out, but make sure you're also turning that into us. Okay. So if there's no questions, this was very short. We're going to conclude.
I got a question here,
Okay.
Michelle. With regards to the broker's fees, it is based on the term of the lease. Am I
Yes.
correct? Now,
Yes.
if the lease, normally the lease for residential is 1 year or 12 months. What if, let's say, the lease term is, let's say, 2 years or 3 years?
It depends on how you document. Let me pull back in. Okay. Let's take a look at a lease listing agreement. Do I have it pulled out? It depends on how you document your lease listing agreement.
My question is, if the lease is, let's say, more than 1 year, let's say it's 2 years or 3 years.
Right.
So basically, the broker's fee is based on the 24 or 36 months.
Not
lease term,
necessary.
right?
Let's look at the, okay, hang on, let me find it. I'm sorry, lease. We have to document it properly. Okay, let's take a look. Let me just make sure. I remember, because I read these so much that, okay. All right, so for fixed term leases, let's look at the compensation to the broker. Okay, so you would put here, let's just pick a number. I'm going to say 5%. Okay. 5% of the term specified in 2C. Let's go back up. Type of tenancy. Okay, so this is where, because I remember this a long time ago, we got caught on this. Why? Because the type of tenancy, we put 1 year. So now I'm very conscientious about putting here, you can put 1 to 3 years or whatever, because trust me, if you click 1 year, they know that. And then you get a 24-month lease, you're only going to get paid for 1 year. So you want to be careful of that. So, because that did happen to us once. So I put 1 to 3 years here, right? Because this compensation box is referring you right back up to 2C. So if you think you can nail a 24-month lease, cover yourself. Okay?
So we put 24 months.
Yeah, or other, you can put up to 24 months. Something
Okay,
like that,
up to 24
yeah,
months.
that's a
Okay.
good way to do it, up to 24 months. Up to, yeah, 24 months. But make sure you cover yourself, because if you just mindlessly, like I did before, check the 1 year, but then you end up with a 2-year lease, you're only going to get paid for the 1 year, depending on if the housing provider, maybe they'll be generous with you. I don't know, but they're going to go by the contract. Trust me. So make sure you cover yourself. I am so glad you brought that up, buddy, because sometimes we don't know to do that. Thank you for bringing up such a great question.
Thank you.
Okay, can I have a question, Michelle? Can you please provide a list of for the lease, like the tenants? What the documentation that you need from the other side? Not the owner, the landlord, the tenants.
You mean a checklist? Is this Diana?
Checklist, yes, Diana.
Oh, yeah,
Checklist.
we have a checklist. It's on our website, but yeah, I'll send you a copy of it.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
we
much.
have checklists for the listing side of residential leases, and when you're going on contract, what you will need.
I just sent out a procedure of how to go onto our website and how to go get the checklist. That was probably within the last 2 weeks. So you should have an email.
From you?
It's for me, yeah. Through Red, but for me.
So Rhett blasted it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll ask Rhett to read, and that is the instructions on getting checklists?
Yes.
Okay, we'll e-blast that out, because that's really good information for everybody. But yes, we have checklists. Anna has built them, so I use them, I print them on every file, and I kind of monitor myself that way. Even if you're using the broker's version where all the forms are there, I would say the checklists are very closely worked on. So I would also compare it to the checklist that she's prepared. Okay. So any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to, let's see, stop the share and where am I? I can't even see.
You
Okay.
mind, Michelle, can I just bring up a subject on the leases?
Yeah.
So when the leases are being done, there's always a confusion regarding the commission. If you only represent one side,
Yep.
your landlord should be making a check to High Temp Partners, Inc. For your portion, not the other side's portion.
Yeah.
And when you close a lease, sometimes it takes you a while to get that commission check, but you really have to stay on top of it and get it to us as soon as possible.
Yeah, so the commission checks, we're going to expect them within a week. after the close, no longer than a week. So if you don't turn it in, you need to update us on what's going on. We know maybe you're working with a housing provider that's a big corporation. It takes a little longer to process, but please do update us. Okay? So if there's no further questions, I'm going to conclude the meeting. Okay. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Buddy, for the excellent question. And I will see you all Monday and at Peter's 10 a.m. meeting, and have a great weekend. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Again.